Hi, everyone. We're just going to give a couple seconds here for people to get in. I think it's looking good. That's exciting. Awesome. Well, welcome, everyone. My name is Brill Osman, and I am the marketing manager here at Convergence Networks. And I know we have a lot of customers on the call, but for those of you that are new here, Convergence Networks is a managed IT and cybersecurity services provider across North America. So we have offices in both Canada and the US. And a lot of what we've been getting questions about lately is about Copilot and how different businesses can use it, how they can implement it with their team, and the security considerations around it. So we really hope that you get to find value in this. I know I'm really excited that we finally get to put something like this out. It's really, really exciting. So just for some quick housekeeping, this will be recorded and it's going to be sent out after the session. We also have a Q&A feature at this top bar there, if you can see it. So ask your questions and hopefully we'll do our best to get to them at the end. So with that, I'm actually going to get into the good stuff and introduce you to Jen Grundy and Jonathan Wolff, our speakers for today.
Brill, I just want to make sure that people can see the screen. I can see a few messages there.
Just a second. Blank screen, not helpful. Try this again. Yay, okay, I think we're good.
I wonder if anyone can let us know if it's working.
It's good to go. I see lots of chats, so you're good, Jen.
Okay, awesome. Hi there, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm Jennifer Grundy. I'm one of the many vCIOs here at Convergence Network. So my role is to assist enterprises plan their IT strategy in line with their business goals. So I provide general guidance to our clients. I'm effectively a fractional CIO. We talk about business continuity, disaster recovery, information and cybersecurity management, risk mitigation, and also productivity tools like Copilot today. So I'm looking forward to reviewing that all with you. For the introduction, I'm going to hand it over to John.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks, Brill. And thank you, everybody, again, for taking the time to join us today to talk about Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'm Jonathan Wolff, and I lead our security consulting and assessment division within Convergence Networks. I'm joining the call today to talk a little bit about what Copilot is and discuss a little bit of the security considerations around implementation. And with that, let's jump right in and take a look at what Copilot is. All right, so one of the first things we would like to talk about is Copilot for Microsoft 365 is essentially an AI-powered tool that integrates with your Microsoft 365 applications to enhance creativity and productivity. It leverages the power of large language models to LLMs, as you see in that first little box there, to essentially understand and generate human-like text, assisting users in a variety of tasks throughout their day-to-day life. And I know you're probably thinking right now, what is an LLM? An LLM is essentially a large language model. It's a type of AI that's used to generate text based on a vast swath of information. Generally speaking, the whole internet, if you will. You might be familiar with LLMs like ChatGPT or Google Gemini. They can actually write convincing text, answer questions, and even mimic human writing styles that can be used both for beneficial and, unfortunately, malicious purposes. And when we're talking about LLMs, Copilot is where it gets a little different. As you see, there's a few other icons on there like Microsoft Graph, Microsoft 365 apps, and the internet. And that's where Copilot gets a little bit deeper. It integrates with your Microsoft 365 ecosystem to provide a seamless experience across applications like Word, Excel, Outlook, and Teams, while also providing the capabilities with something like ChatGPT. However, Copilot's designed with enterprise-grade security and data protection that uses essentially organizational security and compliance standards to adhere to best AI practices. Next, we want to talk a little bit about the differences, some of the common Copilot subscriptions that we've received quite a few questions about. All right. So first, let's talk a little bit about Copilot Personal. Most people out there on the internet may have seen this already. It's Copilot on the web. It's very similar to ChatGPT, for instance. When you prompt it and it provides you answers, if you give it data, it uses that information to train AI models, which unfortunately is essentially giving your information away. And this is one of the first questions we get really pretty frequently around Copilot and, is our organization secure if we use it? If you're using the free online version, the free personal version, it's not secure. So I would advise you not to use that for corporate information. The next step up from that is Copilot for Web, which it provides a similar functionality to personal, but it also allows you to train, it also allows you to essentially not train the AI or save your interactions. So if you ask it a question about something specific to your business, it's not going to use that information to train AI or be available for other users. You should also see a banner that says protected when this is enabled to know if it's actually working or not. And then finally, the one we're going to talk about the most today is Copilot for Microsoft 365. It provides the same type of web protections that you find with the Copilot for Web, but it also can connect to all of your applications, so Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and your corporate information. And that provides the most robust security and peace of mind, knowing that your corporate information stays your corporate information. Next, let's take a little bit deeper look at what that means with Copilot 365. So Copilot ensures that the security of your business data by not saving the prompts or answers. So again, if you're using Copilot for Microsoft 365 and you you ask it a question about, say, a sales Excel file you have in your environment, that information is not going to the internet. Microsoft's not saving it. They're not using it to train their AI models. It's very safe and secure from that perspective. And they have a commitment to data privacy that upholds the integrity of the organizational information and aligns with enterprise security standards. Next, it also, despite the fact that it has what might be somewhat considered like limitations or siloed, it still has access to the latest models like ChatGPT 4 and DALL-E 3. And I believe we recently read that I think ChatGPT 4.0 is also coming directly to Copilot in the next couple of weeks. So as these models advance, Copilot is adopting those newest models to stay current. It's also using transparency through citing and data sources. So whenever you ask it a question or need to find some information, it'll cite that information much like a research paper where it cites sources. So you can actually validate the information being provided by the system to ensure that it's providing the most accurate information. I know I said a lot there. It's kind of boring. So I'm going to hand it over to Jen so we can see Copilot in action.
Thanks, John. So what I want to chat next, before I actually go ahead into the Copilot in action, is actually the daily uses for Copilot. So for example, for me, what's really helped me quite a bit is the summarization capability that's available in Outlook, for example. Oftentimes I'll be on a long email thread. Maybe it was from a week or two ago, and I can't quite remember, and I don't really feel like reading through it. And so the Outlook, when I've got that email open, I can hit that summarization tool. It'll create a few quick bullets for me, and then I can go right into the actionable next step. So I absolutely love that feature. It's also able to do that in Microsoft Word. So if I've got a lengthy kind of multi-page document, I'll be able to create, I can ask Copilot, for example, to provide a summary of some of the high-level bullet points, and then kind of go from there with my response. I don't know about you guys, I would say that I get writer's block. So sometimes if I've got to craft, for example, a sensitive email or someone's asked me to put together a Word document, I'm not sure, trying to get my thoughts in order in terms of the templates and the subheadings can take me quite a bit of time. And so I'm using the drafting feature that's available in Outlook as well as Word is incredibly helpful to me. The last thing I want to touch on is Microsoft Teams. So the capabilities for intelligent recap within the Microsoft Teams functionality is pretty incredible. So during the meeting in real time, I can ask Copilot questions about the meeting as it's going on. Let's say I joined 5 minutes late, I can ask what I missed, and it'll be able to share that to me in real time. After the meeting's over, within the Teams platform, I can pop over into the calendar, and it's going to be able to provide me some detailed notes about the meeting, as well as action items. So in terms of who needs to be doing what, which saves quite a bit of time. So next, I am going to, I think I'm done kind of talking about Copilot. I think what you really want to see is Copilot in action. So before I do that, I want to cover a few quick points. So it's important to note that your data is in OneDrive or SharePoint. That's going to get you the best results in terms of Copilot being able to parse the data that we're looking at. Next, I want to talk about the data integrity. So is that actual new data? Is there redundant data in the environment? So in the IT space, we call that rot. So do you have any redundant, outdated, or trivial information in your data set? Copilot's not going to be able to discern if you've got multiple versions necessarily about which one it should use as you're pulling it into a document. So making sure you've got good data sets is going to be important. And lastly, I'm going to let John talk more about information and cybersecurity later, but I want to clarify that it is going to use the permission sets and data classification that you have already set for your organization when it's allowing me to access that data. And so that's going to be critically important. So with that, I'm going to cover, I'm actually going to share my screen, bro. I'm going to pop over here into Microsoft Word. John, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Okay.
Good to go.
So here we go. So here is my Word document. For the purposes of the demonstration, I've pretended I am part of an e-bike company. So you can see here my production team has produced this document about our new e-bike, and I'm pretty excited about that. I actually work in marketing though, and so this is quite lengthy, and I only need a little bit of this information to get started on the type of work that I do. So right here, this is Microsoft Word. I've got a subscription to Copilot, so you can see the Copilot icon here in my upper ribbon. You're going to find that across all of the platforms. So I'm going to go ahead and click into Copilot here. That's going to open this handy Copilot chat window. So here you can see that it's providing me a little bit of guidance in terms of some helpful tips. So here I can summarize this document. I can even ask a question about the document. So that's helpful. Thanks, Copilot. Down here in the bottom, I've got this prompt icon. So if I'm not quite sure, or as you're just getting started with Microsoft Copilot, you might want to use this View Prompt button. It's going to help you provide some other examples. Maybe I'd like to get more understanding about the document. There's some quick tips I can use. Alternatively, I can ask some questions. So maybe I'm actually not sure how to use Word, and so maybe I've got a few quick questions and I can ask for tips and tricks. For right now, like I mentioned, I'm in marketing. I just wanted to summarize this document. So I'm going to go ahead and click that there. It's going to take a few seconds. That would have taken me quite a bit of time to actually read through this document and figure out what the main points were. So there we go. You can see right here in this panel window, Copilot's going ahead and producing some of the main themes and ideas that were in my data set here. So here it's got the main purpose, and features of the bike, performance and design aspects, the target market. It's going to continue going here because I hadn't really put any more information than that. So it's gone ahead and decided what it feels is going to be the main point. So I'm pretty happy with what I see there. And there we go. So Microsoft Copilot's put this together. What's really neat about this feature is I can also copy that. So let's say I want to paste it, I want to copy it onto the clipboard and I might want to use that in an email later. I can go ahead and do that. As John mentioned earlier, you can see some of the citations too. So here it's got citations on each of these subheadings that it's put in there. And so validating the data is going to be incredibly important. And so if I want to pop over to that section, I simply hit the citation and it'll take me to where it's finding that actually in the document itself. It's important to note that it does always say AI generated content may be incorrect. And so although it's put this highlight together for me, I still might want to check that over to get started. So that's all I want to show you here. We only have an hour today, so I'm going to cover a few highlights in each of the applications. So that is the analytics and kind of summarization tool here within Microsoft Word. I'm going to pop over here and open another document window. The next thing I want to show you is actually pulling from a document specifically. So like I mentioned, I'm in the marketing department. I've got to create a go-to market strategy. I can't recall how I typically put these templates together, and I actually want Copilot to help me. So rather than open my Copilot window that I was using for analytics, this time I'm actually going to use this drafting panel that appears right here within Word. So I can either use Alt-I on my keyboard. Alternatively, I can simply click on this icon here. So this window pops up. It's important to be specific with your prompting so you can get the best information. For right now, I'm going to type in draft a go to market strategy for our new e-bike launching in March. And I do want to reference the file that I had pulled up earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that /, which is going to pull up any relevant documents that I've recently worked on. And there we go. There's that bike specification document, and we're going to go ahead and generate. This might take a few seconds longer than what I showed you earlier because it does have to be comprehensive in terms of this marketing plan it's putting together. It is going to parse that multi-page document to be able to show me. So here we can see it's coming along. To have been a little bit more specific in my prompt, I could have actually put in some constraints in terms of the number of pages that I might want to see this in. For right now, I just want Copilot to go for it and give me as much information as I'm going to need to get started. So we can see here in just a few seconds, it's gone ahead and put together an executive summary based on the document I provided, some target market segments, brand identity, and positioning, and it's going to keep going. It's also actually pulled some competitor information. You can see here using the large language model, it's let me know that competitors in the e-bike space are actually Rad Power, Rad Runner, and Cross Current X, and I'm going to want to validate that a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and stop generating here just because we are in a live webinar. I'm going to go ahead and keep it. I'm pretty pleased with what it's been able to put together in just a few seconds. Now, as I'm going through these sections, you can imagine I've read through this very quickly and I'm not loving this executive summary. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that and go ahead and click my Copilot button. I can go ahead and rewrite this with Copilot. Alternatively, I could visualize this as a table. The table doesn't really make sense in this use case, but I'm going to go ahead and rewrite. So you can highlight particular sections where it's rewriting information that it's already put in place. Alternatively, if I didn't have an executive summary, I could have actually clicked the button and asked Copilot to draft an executive summary for this document. So here you go. It's provided this secondary window with the rewrite option. I can go ahead and replace that text. I can insert it below. Maybe I want to switch back and forth between the texts and see which one makes the most sense. I can go ahead and regenerate a new text for it to provide. Lastly, I can adjust the tone. So here it's gone ahead with a neutral tone, but if I want it to be professional, casual, or more imaginative in nature, I can go ahead and click that button and it's going to continue to iterate for me. So this second document was an example of pulling in another document. I could have pulled in more than one. And so let's say I had a few vendor documents and I wanted to compare them. Maybe it had some cost structures in it. I could have actually clicked on 3 separate documents and maybe I want to put together a comparative analysis document and Copilot would have put that together for me as well. The last example I want to show within Microsoft Word is actually completely drafting from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Copilot button. I'm going to pretend now I'm actually on the production team. I've been asked to put together a project plan. I normally don't do this type of formalized work, so I'm going to need Copilot to help me. So I'm going to go draft a project plan for the production of our new e-bike. You can see here, I'm not providing any guidance or not being too specific anyway, in terms of what I want Copilot to produce. For right now, I just really need the high level template items. I'm going to go ahead and be more specific when I get started on this assignment. So I happen to ask for a project plan template. You can ask for policies, for example. I could have asked for some tables to be put together. So you can get creative about your own organization and what might be helpful to you. So I'm really appreciating what it's put together here, it's gone through the executive summary, some project objectives, and some project tasks, as well as actually putting them into a phased approach, which I hadn't really thought of. And so that's going to be helpful when I get started customizing this document. So I'm going to go ahead and stop generating. I think you've got the gist of being able to create a document from scratch that you can actually work on in your organization as well. So that's all I'm going to talk about for Microsoft Word today. I'm going to go ahead and pop into PowerPoint. So in terms of Copilot within PowerPoint, I can go ahead. You can see my Copilot icons right here in the upper right-hand corner. Copilot's going to be kind again and go ahead and provide me a few examples of what I can do with Copilot in PowerPoint. I think I'm going to go off brand right now, not talk about e-bikes. So I'm going to go ahead and create a presentation about dogs. So let's see if Copilot's going to be able to help me out with that. So this is going to take a little bit of time. Copilot's going back to large language model. I hadn't provided a detailed prompt, and so it's going to put together what it perceives to be relevant information about my dog presentation. And there we go. There is my dog presentation. So here you can see it's put together a 12-slide deck. I'm really loving the visuals that it's picked. That's probably better than I could do, and I certainly couldn't do it in under a minute. So you can see here it's gone through some subsections like history of dogs, origins of dogs, even some of the toy dogs. And so I love what Copilot's been able to put together. Another one of the most helpful tools is actually the notes section's been prefabricated for me. And so I didn't plan on giving a presentation on dogs, but knowing that I've got these notes handy is going to go a long way in terms of putting this presentation together. Alternate ways that Copilot could help me. I noticed here that there isn't a slide to ask questions. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Copilot to add a slide to ask questions. So you can add a slide about anywhere kind of within the subset of the slides that it's put together. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask it to put a slide at the end. And we can see here it did, although it says that it added a slide for questions at the end, it didn't actually do that. And so that's an important note that I want you to take as well. Copilot may provide different results each time that I ask for this presentation. It may not, in fact, actually do what I've asked. And so here is the perfect example of AI generated content may be incorrect. So that was a real world case of it being incorrect there. Alternative things I could have done was actually ask it to change the font across all of the slides as well. So that's all I'm going to touch on here. The only other thing I wanted to cover was branded template. So Brill here in our marketing team has made me this beautiful Van Arsdale template that I'm actually supposed to use when I'm creating presentations. And so you can see here, it's got each slide that can be used. So if I wanted to use Copilot here, I could have created a presentation either from a file or a new presentation, for example, that dog presentation, and it would have actually put it right over the slide deck and stayed on brand. So that's another use case that might be helpful to your organization. I'm sure you're thinking, Jen, enough about dogs. Let's get back to bikes. So I'm going to pop back over into Microsoft Excel. And we've got our latest sales data on the e-bikes that have been sold. And so here you can see my table. It's important to note that, again, my document has to be saved in Microsoft OneDrive or on SharePoint. The autosave has to be on, and my data has to be in a table. So I've already gone ahead and done all of that. Here you can see my table. It's got the models, the product category, as well as the current price and the production cost. So I'm going to go ahead and open Copilot to do some analysis. What's different here compared to when I was in Word or or PowerPoint was that my Copilot didn't say preview. And so preview is Microsoft's way of letting us know it's got limited capability. It's also only available in select countries. And so this may not have the full breadth of what I'm looking for, but for today, it's going to be good to be able to show you what it can do. So I'm going to go ahead and click back into the data set. Here, I want to know a bit more about the profit margin. So I'm going to ask Copilot to create a column for a profit margin. The Copilot's going to present a formula that it thinks is relevant to the question that I'm asking here in this preview panel. I'm pretty happy with that. It's done current price minus the production cost over the current price. And I do actually want to go ahead and add that into my chart. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that column. I want to know actually which bikes, though, we're really losing money on. This has quite a bit of data, and I want to be able to see that visually. So I'm going to go ahead and click back in here. And this time, I'm going to ask Copilot to mark all negative profit margin items with a colored icon. What I'm asking Copilot to do is to use conditional formatting. We're going to see if it's going to work. It says it's making changes to my table, so let's wait and see. And there we go. So Microsoft Copilot has gone ahead and actually used conditional formatting to let me know about which of the bikes actually aren't doing so hot. So I can quickly see that visually, and I might want to take that back to the production team or sales to review those specific bike numbers quickly. Another thing I could have done was actually added some totals tables at the end. Same thing, Copilot does have the view prompts, which has some suggestions that I can use. The other item I wanted to show you was some data insights. So I'm going to ask Copilot to go ahead and show me some data insights. Oops. I haven't been too specific with my prompt here, so Copilot's going to decide for me what it thinks is valuable information within the data set that I've provided. So there we go. It feels quantity on hand by wheel size might be relevant to me. That may or may not actually be relevant to you. And it's found some other insights. So to be more helpful, I actually want to see these all at once. So I'm going to go ahead and add all insights to my grid. It's going to create a second sheet for me with the various insights. So you can see it's gone ahead and graphed those. At the bottom here is actually some of the pivot tables that it used to graph that. I'm going to have to go through this with a closer eye after and validate that those are actually going to be relevant in terms of my analysis. But that's all I want to talk about for Microsoft Excel. I know John's got some exciting security information he wants to get to soon. The last element in the live demo I want to showcase is actually Outlook. And so I can't show you my full Outlook in terms of the summarization tool, but I did want to show you some drafting and coaching features. So I'm pretty excited about that e-bike I talked about earlier. So I've gone ahead and written this email that's going to go out to my team. Normally, I would actually have run this back over with Brill just to see what she thought, but I know Brill's in a webinar right now, so she's not going to be able to review this for me. So I'm going to go ahead and open my Copilot window. I could have drafted this email with Copilot instead of agonizing for 20 minutes on what I was about to write, but I actually, I've already done that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Coaching by Copilot. This is going to be able to provide me some insights on my tone and my delivery and just make sure that I'm being clear and concise in terms of the email I'm sending. So Copilot's going to come up with a few columns that it's done an analysis on my email on, and I'm still going to decide if that's actually relevant once I get to see it. Okay, there we go. So coaching by Copilot. You can see here it's covered a few categories. So the tone, my reader sentiment, as well as clarity. It feels like I should inject more emotion. So it thinks I'm enthusiastic and positive, but maybe it's a bit formal and I could be more, friendly or casual. It's provided things like "you rock." That's probably not going to be something I'm going to put in this email, but in any case, take Copilot suggestions with a grain of salt. It's gone through reader sentiment as well as clarity. So you can take a look through these and see if it's helpful if you want to just, have a real-time assistant actually check back some of your emails. So that's all I want to cover in the live demo. I'm going to have Brill go ahead and go back into our presentation. I just want to touch on Teams. Unfortunately, I don't actually work for an e-bike company, and our Teams has confidential data to our business as well as regarding our clients. So I'm not going to be able to pull that up in real time. But I do want to show you some of the aspects of Copilot in Teams.
Sorry, it's coming here. Just taking a second.
No problem, bro.
While I'm getting it up though, Jen, there are a couple questions that we might just want to touch on while we're here. So one of the questions was, can it pull images from a folder that you have the photos in? Or like if you have photos in it, like can you do that?
So what you can do, I'm not sure if that's in reference to PowerPoint or to Word, but I can actually put in the file path. So I was using the quick reference button where I was actually using the / to pull up a document that I'd recently looked at, but you can actually paste the file path in there directly as well.
Interesting. Okay, and then one of the questions was, where do I purchase Copilot web version? Is there a place?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's a question related to personal or in the corporate environment. So for those organizations who are on the call who are already subscribed, for example, the business standard or business premium licensing, you can actually simply pop into your Edge browser and click on the Copilot icon, and that will be protected and you can go ahead and use that. It is paid for and included with your current subscription. So I'm not sure if that's what the question is, Bro.
Yeah, but I think that probably works.
Can
They
touch
can
on it
say
at
if
the end
not.
too.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think you can do this, but can Copilot include citations in documents? Have you tried that feature?
I have not. Do they mean actually? I actually don't know what they mean in that question. I don't know if you do, John.
I think they're asking, if we ask Copilot to provide us with useful information about a topic, instead of in the analysis section, in the actual drafting section, like in Word, if we have it type something out,
I see.
is it going to put the sources and references in the body of that document? I think is what they're asking.
Okay, I haven't seen it do that. So you saw actually I'd pulled up that go-to-market plan and it did actually reference some bike competitors. You can see that it didn't actually reference where it got that information, but I think I'm going to have to check a little bit deeper on that question, but it's a great question.
Yeah, and then the other one I just wanted to touch on too is somebody asked, how do they get Copilot installed with their 365 subscription?
That's great. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, Brill, on how they can actually proceed with the licensing. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to touch on that in just a few minutes.
Yeah, that's perfect. Sounds good. Okay.
Okay. So the last thing I wanted to touch on was Microsoft Teams. That's disappeared for me, Brill. I don't know if it has for you. Might have lost Brill entirely.
Oh no.
John, are you seeing something on screen?
I think she just logged back in there.
There we go.
It looks like she dropped for a second.
Okay, so my most favorite feature of all of the functionality that I chatted about today is actually Copilot in Teams. And so you can, this is just a screenshot kind of showing you what the interface looks like. So on the right-hand side, I've got my Copilot window, much the same as the Copilot window I was pulling up earlier. So during a meeting, I can actually, let's say I popped in about 5 minutes too late, I can go ahead and ask Copilot to recap what's happened so far in the meeting. It'll provide a quick synopsis of that. Let's say John's gotten really deep on some security and I don't really know what he's talking about. I can go ahead and ask Copilot to provide me some more details on what John has mentioned. Alternatively, I might want to sound really smart during the meeting and I want to stump John. I can actually ask Copilot, what are some challenging questions I can ask John during this presentation? And I can do that all live. That's personal to me while I'm using Teams. And so that's a very helpful tool. After if it's important to note, I hadn't touched on this, the meeting does have to be recorded and transcribed to be able to get those notes at the end of that meeting. And so what I can do at the end of the meeting is go ahead and pop into Microsoft Teams to my calendar and go ahead and find the meeting that I had joined earlier. Or alternatively, if you miss the meeting, you can actually follow it and still get those notes. So you can see there in that middle screen, it's gone ahead and provided some of the meeting notes as well as some of the follow-up tasks that are required. And so even if I miss a meeting, or let's say I didn't take notes during the meeting, Copilot can handle all of that for me. And so the functionality within Microsoft Teams is pretty exciting. So the next thing I want to chat actually is just quickly on prompting. And so you saw through the demonstration, I was asking Copilot to draft. I could have been a little more specific in what I was looking for. And so I want you to consider making sure that your prompts have these 4 aspects. And so one is the goal. So what response do I want? So here in this example, I've asked for 3 to 5 bullets. You saw in my live demonstration, I'd actually asked for a project plan or a go-to-market. I called it strategy. And so the first thing you want to ask Copilot is what? What am I looking for? The next thing I want to do is ask why. I want to provide some context. So Microsoft has what's called its semantic index. It's going to review that and try to consider it from my perspective or what I'm actually trying to do. And so I could say, generate 3 to 5 bullets for my upcoming meeting with the exec team. Let's say I was actually in HR, and I can say as the HR manager. And so providing that context is going to help Copilot craft that message a little more specifically to my use case. The next thing is the source. This may or may not be relevant depending on what you are looking to do. So you saw in that second example in Word, I did provide my e-bike specifications because I really did need that document to be able to create my next one. Maybe you're going to ask it to review an email or a chat to provide your response. So if you've got a source, make sure you mention it. Lastly is expectations. And so how do I want to see that? And so sometimes I might say I'd like to see it in simple language. Maybe I want to see it in a template. Maybe I want to see it in a table. So make sure you share with Copilot what your expectations are when you're getting the response. So the best prompts have all of these components in it. Microsoft has also a page dedicated to helping you with prompting, which I'll touch on a little bit later. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to John.
Thanks, Jen. It's really cool to see all the prompting, like gets the cogs in your head turning, even the dog presentation, that was really cool. You got lots of wows. So we'll try to bring it back to reality just a little bit here. I know it's exciting to see this tool and talk about what it can do and potentially for your organization and where it can save some time and all that. But first, let's talk a little bit about how to roll Copilot out. How to roll Copilot out. One of the first things we want to talk about is information management, right? As you saw in Jen's examples, she was, referencing files that were inside of Microsoft already, inside of Microsoft 365, living in like SharePoint or OneDrive. So one of the first things you need to think about is, where is your information today? Is it already in Microsoft? Because if it's not, and you go forward with Copilot, you might not be getting the most relevant or worthwhile answers or the best return on your investment because it's losing access to a lot of the stuff that it could provide better relevant answers, right? So understanding where your information is and where it needs to be for Copilot to access it is extremely important. I'm going to pause there just for a second and say, even over the last, and all of this stuff is moving faster than most technology in general, from application development, like all of it. This is moving very fast. And even over the past, I think, 2 weeks since we started doing this presentation, they've released functionality where you saw Jen using the / to access SharePoint or OneDrive locations, right? It now has the ability to index your local computer too, which is rolling out over the next couple of weeks. So the advancements and changes are moving at a very fast clip. So there might be times where we say things in this webinar that change in the next couple of weeks just with how fast things are moving. But back to the information management. So understanding where you're at with your information is one piece of it, right? but also, are you already utilizing Microsoft 365 across the board, right? As we saw in that last slide, Jen was showing some examples of Microsoft Teams, right? If you're using Microsoft 365, but say still using Zoom for your webinars or web meetings and stuff with clients, you're going to miss out on all that functionality that Copilot can provide in Teams real time and afterwards. So it's important to, again, make sure you're fully utilizing the stack before you add something like Copilot on the top. Because again, this is the tool that's meant to complement your Microsoft 365 environment, right? So I guess more to the doom and gloom side of things. When we're talking about Copilot and the access that it has, right, it's all based on the user that's accessing Copilot. So in Jen's case, she was able to pull back files that she has access to in Microsoft 365. So another foundational question you really need to ask yourself is, do I know who has access to all my information, and do I know where it's actually all at, right? Because if you don't know the answer to that, or you're not confident, it's going to lead to some unexpected results. For instance, if permissions or user groups and security settings weren't set up correctly, it's possible that sales has access to like an HR SharePoint directory, and they don't know it because they don't necessarily navigate there. But now you add a useful artificial intelligence assistant on top of that. They're like, hey, I'll go find those files for you. And they pull back a bunch of stuff that maybe that person shouldn't have access to, right? Now we're talking about some maybe legal ramifications associated, like personally identifiable information or who knows what, right? So again, we're adding a tool on top of things. So if we don't have the foundation set from the beginning, you could potentially be opening yourself up to more risk than the tool's worth until some of that foundational stuff is figured out, right? The best way to approach this is through, implementing some kind of data classification policy and enforcing it in Microsoft 365 through the use of data loss prevention and data classification. It's now called, I believe, Microsoft Purview. And there's a lot of useful tools in there that can help guide you down that path. But if you don't have a guiding light like a policy in place today that classifies the type of information you have, and you don't implement that into Microsoft, Copilot's not going to discern what's sensitive and what's not, and may keep track of information it shouldn't. For instance, sensitive meeting recaps for things that maybe shouldn't be recorded, right? If you don't properly set those things ahead of time, you may find yourself in a situation where you're creating or generating information that is maybe you shouldn't be, right? And to take that just one step further, from a malicious point of view, right? Let's say now I'm a hacker and I managed to phish one of your users who has Copilot enabled, right? Now it's very easy as a hacker to do some reconnaissance and lateral investigation through the environment. I can just use Copilot, and whatever permissions that user has, hopefully they're set correctly. It could possibly pull back anything that hacker's looking for, like, hey, Copilot, look through all the files I have access to and tell me if I have any password files, and then sort those at the top by the best password first. And I've instantly reduced the time it takes for me as an attacker to take advantage of the environment, right? So again, understanding some of the core principles when it comes to cybersecurity and data protection and implementing those prior to laying Copilot on top is, in our opinion, very essential. Once we got all the security out of the way and we feel confident that the lay of the land is good, then it's about testing. We don't want to roll it out to all users at once. Preferably, you want to start with a smaller test group of users and feel for how it's going to work in the environment, gather feedback, work through any of these inconsistencies you might find with configurations or something of that nature, and then continuously roll out to the rest of the group. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jen to talk a little bit about the value Copilot can bring to an organization.
Thanks, John. I think highlighting those security considerations are really important. I know that's top of mind for a lot of my clients as they're making these considerations. So I'm glad you raised those. In terms of why should I get started with Copilot? So back to excitement yet again. In terms of the pricing, I know that's a question we get from a lot of clients. And so we've got the pricing model there in the bottom right. So in the US market, Microsoft Copilot is an upfront per user licensing. And so you're going to pay for that next whole year upfront all at once. So there you've got on the left-hand side, $360 is the American pricing. And in the Canadian market, let's round up, it's around 500 Canadian per user. And so if we're talking about that small pilot group that John just mentioned, let's say that's about 10 users in your organization, that upfront investment's around $5,000, not to mention the configuration that John had mentioned in terms of data governance. We're going to want to make sure that we do a project to go ahead and make sure all those security settings are as they should be. And so when you are creating a business case in your organization, for that investment, you're probably looking at what is that return on investment. And so we've got an example chart here. So for an employee who's making about $70,000 per year, breaking that annual pricing down to a monthly price, that's about $30. And so 1 hour is actually $30 of that employee's time. And based on what I showed you today, I think we can all agree that an hour would be saved a month. But you can see exponentially there as it's going up that if the user, depending on the nature of the work that they do, they can save 1.5 hours or 2.5 hours, that return on investment becomes a lot more valuable. So if you're looking for that business case, there it is to be able to provide that internally. I really wanted to touch on impact by function or industry. So I used quite a few different hypothetical scenarios there, putting my production hat on or my marketing hat on, just to give you some ideas of how you might be able to use that in their business. And so you might think Copilot's going to provide an overall general value. If you're not quite sure what that looks like, think about impact by function. So as you're looking at your organization overall, whether that's HR, marketing, sales, what are some ways that they can use or leverage Copilot? And so, for example, with HR, they're probably responding to a lot of job applicant messages or emails. Maybe they're having to craft those. And so, using the drafting tool that's within Microsoft Outlook might be incredibly helpful to them. I didn't touch on things like Power BI or Power Automate. And so Microsoft 365 Copilot is available across a lot of their application set. And so there might be some other use cases I didn't cover applications today. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on industry. AI is pervasive across various industries, and so you have a lot of vendors that are dabbling in AI. For today, we really focused on 365, but I've put aside the legal industry, for example. I have a number of legal clients that I work with, and so being able to quickly condense legal documents they might have, searching for documents, for example. I think even in most organizations that are well organized, we're often searching for documents. I might have had that in my Outlook. I can't remember if I saw it in Teams. Maybe it's on SharePoint. And so being able to leverage the search functionality to be able to pull together documentation is incredibly helpful in terms of saving time. And lastly, I put the example of just drafting and rewriting. I know that's certainly a big part of the legal space. And so being able to do that much faster is going to save you a lot of time. Lastly, I'm sure there's a lot of people on the call who are wondering, is AI going to replace my job? Or, what does this really mean? And so what I really want to stress is that a lot of what we consider modern work is to be replying to emails or actually crafting that messaging. And that's not really where the value is. And so the value that I bring to the table, or I perceive I bring to the table, is actually that EQ. It's actually being able to engage with clients and really understand their business. So being able to action that faster, whether that's summarizing an email or be able to provide some documentation that's going to be helpful to them, the real value is actually in the deliverable that I'm providing that client. So that's what I really want you to focus on in terms of leveraging something like Microsoft 365 Copilot. Alternatively, you've hired a number of great staff in your organization that have a lot of knowledge, skills, abilities, certifications. And so what you really want to do is get them back to what they love to do and the skilled work that you brought them in for. And so Microsoft Copilot is going to help you really focus on what matters most in your business. We've just put this slide in here. I know John touched on it a little bit earlier. So Microsoft is changing rapidly. So as John mentioned, from week to week, they're creating more capabilities within their tool sets. Just last week, Microsoft announced their new Copilot Plus line, which is actually Copilot built into the hardware itself on new PCs. Those are launching actually just in mid-June, so around June 18th or so. So keep an eye out for all the changes with Microsoft Copilot. we're going to provide you some resources today that you can kind of learn more, but I want you to know that it's kind of ever evolving as we're kind of heading into this new way of working. Lastly, for those of you who either we scared you or you're really excited, I'm not sure how you're feeling right now, but how do you get started? So speak to your Convergence Networks rep. So as a vCIO for a client base here, I really understand the businesses that my organizations have. I understand their security posture today and some of the use cases and examples that I went through. And so talk to your trusted advisor. They're going to be able to walk you through your next steps that are very specific to your organization. The next thing I want to talk about is learn how AI is poised to create a new way of working. And so what that really means is that it's constantly changing, and you're going to hear about it in the different industries you're in, as well as lots of applications that you're using. So we'll continue. I know Brill puts out some great marketing information, so we'll continue to keep you updated as we can, but take some time to learn a little bit on your own as well. Some of those are actually going to be links, so we're going to be able to help provide some links in terms of how you're going to get started. And lastly, in terms of reviewing your security privacy, absolutely have some conversations with us about what that looks like if you're not quite sure, and we'll be able to move you forward. So that's it here. I want to make sure, I think we've got about 10 minutes left, Brill, so we can open it up to any questions you might have had.
Yeah, we have lots of questions, which is great.
Okay.
The most recent one was Copilot used to generate today's PowerPoint? Just curious, which is quite funny. I wish it was from a marketing perspective. That would have been great.
Yeah.
This particular one wasn't. But a lot of questions about translation. Jen, I don't know if you've played around with it much, but how well does Copilot work for meeting transcriptions notes when it comes to French or Spanish meetings?
I actually haven't played with that. I'm not sure if you have, John, so I'm not quite sure. I can tell you that the transcription, though, kind of going back to English, is pretty impressive. I can tell you that sometimes even during a formalized business meeting, we kind of have a bit of a side chat that might not seem on point. Copilot will actually either omit that from the meeting entirely, or it actually formalizes that, and it might say, you know, Brill and I talked about house maintenance. We might have been talking about interior decorating, but it'll actually formalize that part of the conversation. But I think, Brill, we'll take that question back if that's okay, to chat more about the translation.
Yeah, no, that's great. One question was, we were testing Copilot in Teams, but it seems that it only works in Teams meetings when each user in the meeting has a license for Copilot 365. Have you had that experience, Jen, or do you have any?
So that shouldn't be the case. So one thing, there's a few things that you do need to know. So you do need to own the meeting. And so I'm not able to record a meeting that's not actually mine. And so, for example, with some of my clients, they may have sent me the meeting invite. So I'm not, depending on their security rules that they have in place, let's say in most cases, I can't actually record their meeting. So that's one aspect. The next thing to note is I could be in a meeting and I have a Copilot license, and as long as the group's okay with it, I can go ahead and record that intelligent recap screen that I had shown you before. That's only available to me because I'm the licensed user who recorded that meeting. And so maybe that's what they might be referring to there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be. With Copilot and Edge, is that also in preview, and is it private? Or how is it private, I guess?
That's a great question. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull it up. And I can show you. I just want to make sure I'm not inadvertently sharing my screen. So you could just give me a minute. Yeah. Okay, so I've gone ahead here. I'm just going to take over the screen share, Bro, and share my Copilot here in Microsoft Edge for a second. For those of you who aren't licensed users, which I'm going to imagine most of you aren't since you're on this webinar today, but if you were to go ahead and pop into Microsoft Edge, there's a small little Copilot icon kind of in the top search bar at the end. And if you were to click on that, it's going to pop open this Microsoft Copilot for web window. You can see here, because I'm a licensed user, I can go ahead and toggle over to work, which is actually going to provide me the search results looking at my access that John had mentioned. That John had mentioned before. It's going to pull any documents that are relevant to the response that it's crafting. But for right now, I'm just using the web version. What's most important, and what John stressed earlier, was this protected piece right up here in the upper right-hand corner. And so with a few of the Microsoft licensing sets, you can see that this data is protected. So if I go ahead and ask a question, it is not feeding the large language model, nor is it saving the results. So once I go ahead and actually close this window, it's going to close anything I asked, and my organization isn't saving it either. So if that's what the question was, this is the way to pop into it. For those of you who might be reluctant to start in terms of investing in the licensing, this is a great tool to play around with. I would encourage you and your staff to go ahead and use the web version and ask questions. If you're not even sure where to get started, you can say, I've got these 4 things in my fridge. Help me make dinner tonight. Okay, so get creative, go ahead and play with it. But the one that is available through your license subscription in Edge with Copilot for web is protected.
Awesome. Great. And then, how can we add Copilot to Microsoft apps? I can see it in Edge, but not Word, PowerPoint, or Excel.
So that's the licensing that I talked about. So if you are currently a Convergence client and we're managing your licensing, we actually have to go ahead and procure that licensing for you and actually add it in your Microsoft 365 tenant. And once we do that, then you're probably just have to refresh your licensing information, and then you'll see it appear across the application set.
Can the PowerPoint function pull in pictures from your own files versus online photos? Have you tried that?
I have not tried that, but yes, it should be able to do that, because you could actually pick a particular file. I've taken all of these questions, John. Sounds like no one's got
Okay, I have one for John right now.
Okay.
For the security importance.
You can take this next one too.
For the security importance, how can we effectively convince our leaders that data classification DLP needs to come before Copilot for Microsoft 365?
I think the easy button here to scare them a little bit is around personally identifiable information. Most businesses have that, and I think a lot of businesses don't put forth the effort to understand where that information is and who has access to it. So turning Copilot on will essentially give an easy button access to that information, which could put them in legal hot water. You could take that a step further if your organization is any kind of vertical, like you process credit cards, have health information, you work with the defense industrial base. There's a lot of other industries out there that have very specific requirements that will that you'll also be subject to in the event that that happens. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, John, a little bit further to that, really, it's about risk mitigation. It's about risk appetite, and having that conversation internally about that risk tolerance is for your organization. And I think when you put it in those types of terms, or really understanding what your business may be, what that might cost you, and that could be a cost in terms of brand reputation. It could be what that exfiltration might look like if it actually was a threat actor. And so having discussions a little bit more around the risk might help you go a little bit further.
Great point.
And then, John, this might be a question for you as well. Are there any legalities I need to be concerned about with Copilot?
Yeah, as I just previously mentioned, giving access to information, allowing access to sensitive information types, there are some legality concerns around that, but it's not anything that you aren't already subject to, right? It's not like we're adding in sensitive information. We're adding in a useful bot that can access that information at a very quick pace, right? So whatever legalities you're already under are still going to apply, and those don't really change. It's just you're possibly creating an easy button to access that sensitive information, or opening the potential door for people to access it when they didn't know they could, right? So I think I saw somebody post in the chat, it's very common you hear in security land, security through obscurity, right? I'll name my password file 2022 cat names. Nobody's going to want to look at that, right? That doesn't necessarily work with Copilot, because Copilot's analyzing all your information. It's looking through the document. It's going to find passwords, social security numbers, personally identifiable information, and pull it all back. So you can't really rely on that. It's sort of an outdated way of thinking when we're dealing with this kind of concept, right?
And I don't know, this seems like a very tricky question, but do you foresee using AI tools like this affecting cybersecurity insurance rates? It's a good question.
I don't think Copilot would necessarily affect insurance rates. I think there's other area, like what we're talking about, Copilot for Microsoft 365. If we wanted to get into a deeper conversation around like Copilot for security and some other areas within the business where you can automate and essentially use artificial intelligence to parse information to find actual events happening in real time, I think there's really an argument to be made with insurance around that. But what we're really talking today is about productivity. So I don't think that insurance would look at that and say, yeah, we'll cut you a deal, you know. Maybe.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions and all the time we actually have for anyways. So thank you so much to everyone who joined, and thank you, Jen and Jonathan, for your insights on Copilot. Again, if you want to look at getting Copilot for your business, reach out to your Convergence Networks representative. I know somebody had said support, but we'd prefer if you went to your dedicated Convergence Networks rep and they can help you get a license. So thank you so much, everyone.